What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and we're going to be talking some news today. Before we get into our Week 28 preview, we had a lot of stuff go on in the last couple days. First, I'd like to thank everybody out there watching on YouTube. Thank you very much for all of your support. This is greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit that alert bell. I do Overwatch League content anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week, depending on what's going on. This week we had a lot of stuff going on, so let's dive into the news. Tuesday in the afternoon, after I had finished the wrap-up show for APAC and all that, we had the Overwatch League dropped their new roster construction rules for the 2021 season and the remainder of the 2020 season. So let's go over this really quick, because this leads into some other stuff that we had going on in the news that we're going to spend a few minutes on, because there's a lot going on with it, and there's speculations and thoughts and all kinds of stuff going on. Real quick, 2020 playoff updates. As we continue to plan for the 2020 postseason, we are making changes to the roster rules for this season to ensure teams can continue to compete as potential operational issues arise. From now until the end of 2020, if a team has a player retire, become unavailable for play due to COVID-19, or elect not to travel, that team may sign a free agent to replace the player. Any such replacement signing must expire at the end of the 2020 season, and those players will become free agents for the 2021 season. Due to visa timelines and safety planning, free agents must meet one of the following criteria to compete in the playoffs under this provision. The free agent must have citizenship for a country in Asia. The free agent must have an existing visa to travel to other countries in Asia. Obviously, the Final Four, is going to be in Asia, so this is fairly important. We'll get into the other nuances of this in a later episode, just because it deals more with 2021 and the expectations for that, and we can dive deeper into it. I want to talk about this first, because this has direct impact on what's going on right now before the playoffs and all that kind of thing. So, all right, after reading it, unpacking it a little bit, they're basically giving teams the chance, if, like in the recent weeks, we've had players retire, players decide they don't want to play anymore. Well, whatever has happened with your roster and you need to fill that roster spot, you're allowed to do so under the provisions given. They want every team to feel like, I guess, they have a chance to go to Asia. Let's be honest. Some of the teams, it wouldn't matter. But there's only a few teams that fall into this right now as we speak. It could expand to other teams being able to do this. With COVID, you never know. Some people can get sick. People might decide they don't want to get on a plane and go to Asia, and you have to fill the roster spot. It's providing for, in theory, it's providing for teams to be able to have full rosters to compete in case of an emergency or any. I like the Valorant clause in this, essentially, if a player decides to retire. I'm calling it that because it is a reality right now. It's happened quite a few times, generally bench players, some starting players, but they're offering teams an out clause in order to fill those roster spots by guys that think they can go from a bench professional Overwatch to playing a different game. And this is a good thing in theory. Theoretically, it gives teams a chance if they need to fill roster spots and that kind of thing with the outlying circumstances that are going on with COVID and all that stuff. Stipulations, I have no problem with either. They must be able to travel to Asia, or they have to be from Asia. So they can travel there. They have citizenship in either China or Korea, I'm assuming. Potentially Japan, but I don't think we're going to be doing the grand finals in Japan. I would assume either Seoul or somewhere in China, most likely Seoul. But they haven't given a location. They're probably still scouting for stuff. And theoretically, this is all great. This is good. It provides teams the ability to fix their roster if they need to before the playoffs. And it doesn't give you the out clause of, okay, so I'm just going to I can grab X player because I need him for a playoff run. This is essentially for desperate measures. I think it was the intent was to make sure you have a full roster ready to go for the playoffs, all that kind of stuff. This is where it gets weird. Okay, so then following day, obviously you guys have heads. So yesterday we have Washington signing Decay. Now the first name that pops up when you see this news is, oh my God, where's Decay going? Because he meets all the criteria, and there's some certain teams could use him, have the potential to be able to sign him under these guidelines and, under the stuff that's happened. You have teams like Houston. Rockets just retired. Florida. Sia player has been essentially injured on the roster, but ineligible, or, has declared himself like ineligible kind of thing for the last couple of, essentially since May. Before the May Light tournament, like a couple weeks before that, he decided to go back home and, work some things out and whatever he needed to do. I think he had some physical issues and stuff like that. But you have, teams like that. You've had other players retire. And Washington has had 2 players retire. They also have a player that they signed 2 years ago that they can't get across the ocean in Lulsish. I'm not going to say that this is totally shady, the Washington situation. Yeah, I would like to have seen Decay on Florida because it would give them potential to run double hit scans, do other things. Maybe Houston, he would solve some problems they had there. Kind of the same hero pool as Dante, but those are the 2 teams that I would have thought that he went to, and that was the first thing that came into my mind when I thought of that. So Washington signs him. All right. And they're doing this under the guise of, all right, we only have 7 players, but we only have 6 that are eligible to play. We need another one. They've had Lulsish on their roster since mid-season 2. Him and Elevote, they signed them together, tank duo, and since then he's been on the roster, but hasn't been able to get in the country. Now, for the last... Since they had Corey and Stratus retire, they've been running on a 7-man roster, but technically it's a 6-man roster. And the only reason why they haven't been fined or however that roster eligibility stuff works is they've kept Lulsish on the roster and played with 6 players. But now they've signed Decay, which is a good signing. I think it's a good signing. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference because their team has a lot more outlying issues other than a DPS in their rotation. Their tank line is terrible. I thought Janu would have been good. He's mediocre at best. Roar just is not good right now. I also think Roar is a key factor into bringing Decay in because they're buddies. Because if you remember last year, they went as a package deal to the Gladiators from Element Mystic. So that's another deciding factor. Kind of cuts down on the shadiness a little bit for me. There's familiar faces, familiar things, people he's worked with that he can go there. But back to the Justice overall. Arc, not very good. Aim God is playing exceptionally well. Stitch, mediocre. Tuba is good when he has the chance to go off on Genji. And then Decay, who is by far and away the best player on this roster now. And I guess we can count Lulsish sitting at home, playing ranked, and getting paid. So there's the overall view of Washington. So yeah, it's a great idea to bring him in. Is it going to upgrade them? Yeah, absolutely it's going to upgrade them. I think it gives them the potential to be in matches. But the way their tanks are playing right now, I don't think it matters. They're bad. It could get them a win in the playoffs. Could they surprise a Dallas? They surprise a Dallas and Atlanta. Maybe give Florida or the Valiant a really good match. Yeah, potentially, with Decay. Otherwise, they're kind of shit. And you can say what you want about the move. They found a loophole in this whole thing with the Lulsish situation and exploited it. I think they had factors that helped him out more than other teams to get him. I'm not going to go as far as to say that the league should disallow this. A lot of people are calling for that. The league step in and say, no, you can't have that. I wouldn't go that far. I just think they took the direct wording. They used all of the wording and everything to their advantage. Like I said, the fact that they have Roar. And I believe one of their coaches was on Element Mystic as well. So, there's familiarity. ease in contract negotiation for this month. And the general manager for Florida basically said he's going to get paid a lot of money for playing 2 games. Because they have 1 game left next week. And then, and that's the other thing I don't understand. Is he going to be able to play next week, or is he just eligible to be on the roster to make it for the playoffs? That's some murky water that they really didn't go over in some of that. So they signed Decay. Is he instantly eligible to play? Like, if they had a game this week, would he be able to play? Is he going to be able to play next week? I don't know any of that stuff. They didn't really clarify it. Even if he does play next week, he's got a chance to play 2 matches. Basically what Albert was saying from, as everybody, his online handle, the general manager of Florida, basically saying they're paying him a lot of money to play 2 matches because they're not going to do anything. I kind of agree with him on that, but you know what? If they think it's going to better their team, it's all well and good. They just figured out a way a little bit better than other teams to circumvent the... do I think it's, like I said, do I think it's shady? I think it's a little shit. I wouldn't call it shady. I guess in the end, I call it taking advantage of a business situation through a loophole and with certain pull that you have. So yeah, I guess it's shady. I could word it to sound less dirty with loopholes and that kind of thing. Yeah, they got away with one. Let's just call it that. And they're really, honestly, sure, they could step in and say something, but per the bylines and the wording of the rule, they're 100% doing it correctly. They just didn't necessarily need to do it from a competition standpoint, if you really think about it, them as a team on the whole. But it could be a good leverage for next year, too. They have a lot of money, this team. And I'm not going to say that he wouldn't help them, because he will help any team in the league. Most teams, 99% of them, minus a couple. But if it works out, hey, great for them. I don't see them, like I said, going over their roster. I don't see it being that much of an impact other than maybe winning one match. Let's move on and talk about this week. We spent a lot of time on that. It was something that needed to be talked about, though. Let's talk about Week 28. We have 2 regular season weeks left. This is a lot of makeup stuff. Boy, if you are a Seoul Dynasty fan and a London Spitfire fan, get used to each other, because you're going to be seeing each other a lot in the next 2 weeks, including twice this week. APAC, they're making up some games. NA, they're making up some games. There are 3 teams right now that are not playing because they are caught up on games, and that's Guangzhou, Chengdu, and the Houston Outlaws. There are a couple teams that have 1 match. Washington has 1 next week. But this week, all right, we're going to dive into this, and we're going to talk about the hero pool, which it was fun while it lasted, guys. We had fun, exciting, fast-paced Overwatch for the past month. But the hero pool's powers that be have spoken and said, the next 2 weeks, we do not have Genji, Tracer, Zarya, or Brigitte. Goodbye, Dive. And is that going to bring us back into a double shield May Reaper thing? Probably. There are other things you can run, but a lot of the key components, whether it be one or several, are gone. So you can try and make something up on your own. Some teams desperately need wins, too, to move up in the standings and that kind of thing. Some teams can afford to experiment. In APAC, they're going to do whatever they do anyway. So I'm more interested in seeing what they do with this than NA necessarily. I think NA does a fallback onto the double shield Orisa Sigma, which at this point I'm sick of seeing. And Super said on a stream that they're actively trying to do this. Then why have the hero pool where you get rid of literally all of the dive components that have been run in the last 2 weeks? Brig aside, you could work around no Brig. You can even work around no Zarya. Zarya is just optimal right now, but you could run Diva. You could run Sigma in a dive scenario. Most teams would probably go Diva because everybody's comfortable playing Diva. They have guys on their team that play at an elite level on Diva, So you'd probably see Winston Diva dive, but you could still get Winston Ball now, but you have no flankers really to go with that. I mean, you could do Sombra Ashe, you could do Echo Ashe, something like that, but I don't think it works as well. I don't think it will. I was a big fan of watching the Sombra Genji. That was a nice combo. I just think with all the double shield and all that stuff, it just would be weird. I'm not a big fan of this. I think going into the playoffs and make these crucial games like this, yes, all right, you committed to the hero pool thing, but you got 2 weeks. You have 3 teams that aren't playing at all, going into the playoffs, unless they're trying to make an artificial meta for the playoffs, which is also possible. I would have preferred no hero pools in these 2 weeks. Let these teams just do what they do. Expand upon the meta that was started with the Countdown Cup. Now you have Genji nerfed, which brings in a whole bunch of nuances and a whole bunch of different characters you can bring into the dive, or the double shield, or the poke comps, or whatever you want to run. Death Ball. It opened it up for a more customizing your own play style to, what characters you're good at. I liked that better when we were seeing that in the last couple of weeks. We had Chengdu who does their Chengdu thing. You have teams like Shanghai that like running Sombra Tracer or Sombra Genji. You have other teams that are running a double shield with the flankers. I just like the diversity that was going on in the meta. I don't want to get it to a point where now you've forced 17 of the 20 teams that are playing, some of them playing 3 times in a weekend, 5 games overall. And I believe Seoul and London are playing 5 to 6 games in the next 2 weeks just to make up some time. Seoul has 5 games. London has 5. So you have 2 teams playing 5 games. I mean, not that those teams are not going to necessarily make a lot of noise, but Seoul potentially could. London could get their stuff together. I don't know. What I'm getting at is this is a long rant on the hero pool before we dive into this week's stuff. But I would have liked to have seen just let the meta kind of flow a little bit into the playoffs instead of making a hero pool situation, get teams hard set on playing certain characters and have really no time to flip on a dime when it comes to, okay, no hero pools. They're going to play what's comfortable. We saw that last in the tournament. We saw in the tournament before. What you ban is what, you're going to play the heroes that you can practice. You're not going to practice the Winston Zarya dive if you have 5 games in the next 2 weeks. Or 4, or 2, or 3. If you have multiple games, it does not benefit you to lose them because you're trying to play the long game and skip these 2 weeks and try and figure out what's going to be played in the playoffs. You're going to be focusing on getting, especially if you desperately need wins to move up in the rankings, get a better seed, all that kind of thing. There are teams that could pass other teams, and it makes it easier. It gives you obviously it gives you a better time in the playoffs. You have an easier match potentially. This mucks it up. Essentially, you're going to be doing things necessary to win these next 2 weeks without these heroes that are in there. So you're not going to be practicing Genji or Tracer or Zarya for any of that kind of divey stuff. You're going to have to try and figure it out. You're probably going to be using they're probably going to be playing a lot of Ashe, a lot of May Reaper, that kind of thing. And then what that translates into is we've been practicing that, so it's going to move into the playoffs. So for as much as they don't like double shield and the slow pace of games and the MOBA-esque quality as Jeff Kaplan calls it, we're just force feeding it into the playoffs right now by making these teams play it for the next 2 weeks. You can agree with me or disagree with me on this. That's fine, and we can talk about it, but that's my feeling on this. If you don't like it, don't force it. Yes, that the algorithm that you're using for the hero pool, that's the obvious outcome. Unless maybe the tank was switched with Zarya with either Ball or Winston. Maybe Sigma. But if you don't want this to be a big integral part of the high-level game that you've been talking about for the last 2 weeks, the experimental card and all that, this is the highest level of the game. Don't force a hero pool in there that's going to fucking force these teams into playing it. That's my point. But that aside, let's talk about this week with the hero pools forcing this meta in. Rant over. let's talk about week 28 and the matches that we're looking at. We'll go over the schedule really quick. Everything starts at Friday. We got an APAC match on Friday. As you suspected, it's London Seoul. Then we have in the afternoon in NA, we have Florida taking on Vancouver. Then we have the Gladiators taking on Dallas. Then we move to Saturday in APAC. We have NYXL taking on Seoul, Shanghai taking on London. Back to NA, we have Atlanta, Paris, followed by Vancouver, Dallas. Next match should be Boston Gladiators, finishing up with the Shock and the Fusion. Sunday, we have another APAC match, as you expected it to be. It is Seoul, London. Back to NA, we have Shock taking on Defiant, Mayhem taking on Valiant, and then wrapping the weekend up with the Titans and the Reign. Okay, so let's talk key matches this weekend. A lot of these matches have implications as far as standings, seedings, which we're going to get into a little bit more after this week, so we can see where teams that if they have the potential to move up or down, or any of that stuff before we get into the playoffs and start getting our seedings going and brackets and all that kind of fun stuff. So first match that caught my eye for this week, that focusing on a couple on Friday. I'm gonna watch all the matches, obviously, in whatever shape or form I can do that. Gladiators Dallas does have some implications. I want to see if Dallas can keep going with they were starting to do in the tournament, move on from Arrow, all that stuff. Gladiators, previous episode, or at least the NA ramp up. Gladiators seem to be righting the ship a little bit. I'm gonna check that one out. That's like not the big matches we're going to talk about. Now, I wanted to pick one APAC match outside of London and Seoul, which they have the potential of being okay matches, I guess. It could be very poor Overwatch, but I think NYXL Seoul Dynasty is the best match of the weekend in APAC. For the simple factor of New York seems to have gotten a little of their mojo back. They ran into a machine in the Dragons who beat them. So I'm not taking a lot away from that game, other than Shanghai's better than everybody else by that much, by destroying them in the semis, which I kind of considered more of the finals. They were more potentially on the same level than them in Hangzhou. Them taking on Seoul, who is lost. And everybody seems to think that Seoul has the potential to come back. I don't feel it. I don't see it. Seoul needs this game to bring themselves back into the fray. They need to win too, not Seoul look better. That seems to be a running narrative for the last month. They look better. They still lost 3-1 or 3-0. They got reverse swept by the Spark in the playoffs in an abysmal final 3 maps, when they looked absolutely impeccable in the first 2. No adjustments made. Same story. We talked about it on the review. But they need to right the ship. And this is their perfect opportunity, playing a team that's better than them right now. Seoul should be at their level, and this should be like just a marquee matchup to begin with. Seoul needs to come out and show that they're still alive in this. And New York needs to continue their very good play. Now, obviously hero pools are going to matter here. You're not going to get to see Mono playing ball. It's going to probably be a lot of Orisa Sigma. Maybe you see Winston. I don't know. You don't have that great of flanker potential, but that's the first match that I have on my list. Second match on the list, obviously, Shock Philly Fusion rematch. Great match last week. Shock come out on top. They did all of the things that they needed to do to beat them. Now we have a different meta type situation, and this is for first place in NA. Whoever wins this will be the number 1 seed. Shock, I believe Shock have a game next week they have a game on Sunday against Toronto, which I don't see them having a problem with. And I think they have a game next week, but this is Philly's last game. So this is Philly's last shot to secure the number 1 seed. Where they're at right now, they're ahead with map differential and percentage points and all that because of the unevenness of the games. They're ahead of the Shock. So this is big. With this hero pool situation, though, I have to go with the Shock. But Philly can play this as well. Obviously, we're going to see more Carpe than we did in the last couple of weeks. Just for the fact that you probably want him and Ivy in there, Ivy on the May, Carpe, just like we did in the beginning of the season, if we're in the double shield meta, back to it, like I kind of suspect we will be. But I got to lean towards a Shock just because they're that good. But it's going to be a great match, and Philly just needs to prove just once beating the Shock. I think this is big for Philly. Philly beats the Shock, it gives them confidence going into the playoffs. They can beat the Shock. Yeah, they beat them with a hero pool, but it still puts that into their mind that they can do this. I just think it's imperative that they win. Shock want to win to secure that number 1 spot and continue to be dominant. If they get number 2, are they fine? Absolutely. But Shock are going to be out to get that number 1 spot too. It's going to be a great match to watch. I can't wait for it. Last match we're going to talk about that should be pretty good is on Sunday. I had to find a Sunday match, and this is the best one on the slate. I really don't want to talk Seoul London unless we have the Clown Fiesta of the Week Part 2, which could be them on both ends, but both of these teams. And then we could have Part 3. We could have 3 Clown Fiestas in a matter of 2 weeks with the same 2 teams involved in them. And ironically, it's not Houston and Boston for a change. Anyway, Mayhem Valiant. This to me is who is gatekeeping the top 3. Potentially the top 2. We'll see how Paris does without the Genji, and Sparkle's really good anyway. I think it's not going to make that much of a difference. The rest of their team is better than I think we realize sometimes, because we see Sparkle making these great plays on Genji. You forget how good Hanbin is, how good their support line is. Ben Best is okay. I think he's more manageable in this scenario too. But all right, enough about Paris. But yeah, I think these 2 teams are the kind of that next best team, with Atlanta thrown in there too right now. I think Atlanta's been playing a lot better. Florida, Valiant, Atlanta, and any one of them can slip at any given time. I think Florida's the best of the 3, but this is a moment where the Valiant can prove that they can play, not just relying on Shax going bazonkers on Tracer, or having a good game from KSF and coming back and beating Houston in a last-second clutch blade. This is a chance for them to prove, look, we're on the level with Florida. I'm saying if they beat them, even. We're on the level of Florida. We're just below Paris and the other 2 teams. And Atlanta, we're in this too. Florida needs to win this. They need to win convincingly. They need to go out there and just beat their brains in, to just kind of move upward. Sometimes they hit these good teams and they just don't have enough to get over the hump. They're like the next 5. They can get there, but once you get them over that, up into that upper echelon, they just don't have enough right now. They need to start winning convincingly, tightening things up for the playoffs. I think this is a big matchup for them to go out there and prove that they can potentially hang with these teams by just disposing of the Valiant. And maybe, just maybe, throw themselves into consideration for the 3rd spot. But those are my matches for the week that I'm going to be paying close attention to. Now, let's do the McRight-Click picks. We're going to go down the line, pick all the winners, hopefully. We're going to pick all the matches, rapid-fire succession. So let's get going on that. First match of the weekend, 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday. We have the London Spitfire taking on the Seoul Dynasty in the first match. I am going to go with Seoul in this one. I'm just going with Seoul. They're kind of playing on the same level. Disappointing, leveled off, not great. Now we head to NA on Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Florida Mayhem taking on the Vancouver Titans. I'm taking on the Mayhem, just overall better than the Vancouver Titans. Next match on Friday, we talked a quick second about this. Gladiators, Dallas Fuel, big match. I'm torn on this one. I'm going to go with Gladiators with the caveat I think that Dallas has the potential to win this as well. But I'm leaning towards the Gladiators just a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised if Dallas won. Next up, we have on Saturday, 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from the APAC region, we have the NYXL taking on the Seoul Dynasty. I'm going with NYXL. I think they're better overall. Seoul needs this game desperately. I think they give them a little bit of a match, but New York is just overall better, playing better. Let's move on to the next match. Shanghai Dragons, London Spitfire. Shanghai, no question. Back to NA, Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Atlanta Reign taking on the Paris Eternal. I'm going to go with Paris in a close one. Just a little bit too much for Atlanta right now. Saturday, August 15th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We got the Vancouver Titans taking on the Dallas Fuel. I'm going with Dallas in this, convincingly. Next match, Boston taking on Gladiators. Gladiators, convincingly, no question. Big match of the night, big match of the weekend. We have San Francisco taking on Philadelphia. I take San Francisco in a close match, but they win it in map 5. On to Sunday, rematch number 1 of Seoul versus London. I'm hedging my bet here. I'm going with London. Shoot me. I'm just, I guarantee you guys, on Monday, I will have gotten these picks reversed. I will have gotten both of them wrong, and it will send me into a tirade. But I'm taking London in the rematch. All right, next match, San Francisco-Toronto. San Francisco, no problem. Sunday, 5 p.m., we have the Mayhem taking on the Valiant. I take the Mayhem in this one, close 3-1. Valiant put up a really good fight. Mayhem, squeak it out, 3-1. Final match of the weekend, we have Atlanta taking on Vancouver. I'll take the Atlanta Reign in this one. And that's going to do it for the McRight-Click picks, guys. We went down the whole list, picked all the teams. I know one of you guys will point out and probably laugh at me when I get the Seoul London picks reversed. It is what it is. I did it because I can't really decide on either one, so I just picked one in each match. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you very much for joining me. Everybody out there on YouTube, thank you very much. All of your likes, all of your subscribes, all the support you've been giving me. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Everybody out there in podcast land, thank you as well. Is going to do it, guys, for our Week 28 preview. Thank you very much once again. This is Misfit. I am out. Everybody out there, stay safe. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you on the next one.